It's worth more than your entire life. The sun rose over Lagos like a relentless taskmaster, its heat already pressing down on the city by 5 a.m. In Yaba, the streets were alive with the rhythm of survival, danfo buses belching smoke, Okada riders dodging potholes, and market women arranging pyramids of tomatoes and okra under colorful umbrellas. The air carried the scent of fried plantain, exhaust fumes, and the faint tang of the Lagos lagoon. In the heart of this chaos, tucked away in the stilted slums of Makoko, lived Amaka Nwankwo, a 22-year-old whose dreams burned brighter than the sun but were trapped in a world of damp walls and creaking wooden planks. Amaka's home was a single room, its corrugated iron roof leaking when the rains came. She shared it with her mother, Neka, whose diabetes had stolen her strength but not her spirit. The room held a straw mat, a rusty stove, and a small wooden table where Amaka kept her prized possession, a tattered biology textbook from her secondary school days in Anambra. Neka, once a vibrant teacher, now spent her days on the mat, her breathing shallow, her eyes clouded with pain. "Amaka, my jewel," she'd whisper, her Igbo accent soft, "you are more than this life. Don't let it break you." Amaka was a maid for Madame Ngozi Okonkwo, a formidable businesswoman whose boutiques in Victoria Island dressed Lagos's elite in shimmering ankara and imported silk. The journey from Makoko to the mansion was a daily ordeal. 2 danfo rides, a trek through crowded streets, and the constant fear of pickpockets. The mansion itself was a palace. Granite floors gleamed under chandeliers, air conditioners hummed a cool reprieve, and the walls were adorned with paintings of Madame Ngozi in her signature geli headwraps. For Amaka, it was a glimpse of a life she could only imagine, a world where money bought comfort and respect. Her days began at 4 a.m., scrubbing floors, washing dishes, and preparing meals for Madame Ngozi's family. The work was grueling, but the insults were worse. "Useless girl, can't you clean properly?" Madame Ngozi would snap, her voice sharp as a cutlass, her geli towering like a crown of judgment. Amaka bore it silently, her hands calloused from years of labor, her heart heavy with the cost of her mother's insulin. Her wages, 10,000 naira a month, barely covered a bag of gari, a few sachets of okro, and the cheapest medicine she could find. Yet she clung to her faith, whispering prayers in Igbo as she worked. "Chukwu, give me strength. Chukwu, see us through." Amaka's dreams were rooted in her mother's stories of her own teaching days, when she'd inspired children to reach for the stars. Amaka wanted to be a nurse, to heal bodies the way Neka had once nurtured minds. She'd pore over her biology textbook at night, memorizing diagrams of the heart under the flicker of a kerosene lamp, even though school fees and her mother's illness had forced her to drop out after secondary school. Each page was a promise to herself. One day, she'd wear a nurse's cap and make her mother proud. October 20th, 2020, dawned humid and heavy, the air thick with the promise of rain. Amaka stood in Madame Ngozi's sprawling kitchen, a cavern of stainless steel and imported tiles, washing a stack of delicate china plates. The mansion was unusually quiet. Madame Ngozi was on a call in her study, her children at school, the house staff bustling elsewhere. Amaka's hands trembled from exhaustion. She hadn't eaten since the previous night's watery egusi soup, and her head ached from lack of sleep. As she reached for a plate, her fingers, slick with soap, betrayed her. The plate slipped, shattering on the tiled floor in a cascade of white porcelain. The crash brought Madame Ngozi storming in, her silk boubou swishing, her face twisted in fury. "You clumsy, ungrateful village girl," she screamed, her voice rattling the kitchen. "Do you know that plate was imported from Italy? It's worth more than your entire life." Amaka dropped to her knees, gathering the shards, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, madam, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "It was an accident." "Accident?" Madame Ngozi spat, her geli swaying like a storm cloud. "You're a walking disaster. Get out of my house. I don't want to see your face again." Amaka's heart sank to her stomach. She begged, her hands clasped, her wrapper stained with dishwater, but Madame Ngozi was unrelenting, shoving her toward the gate. Musa, the security guard, looked away, his face unreadable, as Amaka stumbled out onto the busy streets of Victoria Island. The gate slammed shut, and the noise of Lagos swallowed her. Cars honked, street hawkers shouted, and the sun beat down mercilessly. Amaka clutched her faded wrapper and a small nylon bag. Her spare blouse, a comb, and her mother's wooden rosary were all she had. She had no money, no food, and no plan. The weight of her mother's medicine, the rent for their Makoko shack, and the hunger gnawing at her belly pressed down like a physical force. She wandered aimlessly, her slippers slapping the pavement, until she reached a bench near the Lekki Link Bridge. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, but Amaka saw only darkness. She sat, clutching the rosary, and whispered, "Chukwu, don't forsake me." As dusk settled over Lagos, the city's lights twinkled like stars against the fading sky. A sleek black Range Rover pulled up near the bench, its tinted windows reflecting the neon glow of nearby billboards. A young man stepped out, his crisp white kaftan glowing in the twilight, his presence commanding yet warm. This was Tunde Adebayo, 29, the only son of Nigeria's billionaire president, Chief Femi Adebayo, whose telecom and real estate empire dominated the nation's economy. Tunde was different. Where his father thrived on political spectacle, Tunde was known for quiet acts of kindness, funding schools and clinics in Lagos's poorest corners. He was in Lekki to meet a friend but paused when he saw Amaka, her tear-streaked face and tattered wrapper stark against the city's wealth. "Are you all right, sister?" Tunde asked, his Yoruba accent soft, using the respectful term despite their differences in status. Amaka, startled, wiped her eyes with the edge of her wrapper. "I'm okay, sir," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. But Tunde's eyes, warm and searching, saw through her facade. He sat beside her, ignoring the curious glances of passers-by. "You don't look okay," he said gently. "What happened?" Amaka hesitated. Lagos had taught her to guard her trust. Stories of girls lured by kind words were common in Makoko's gossip circles. But Tunde's calm demeanor, the way he leaned in to listen, disarmed her. Haltingly, she shared her story, her mother's diabetes, her years as a maid, the broken plate, and Madame Ngozi's cruelty. Tunde listened, his face shifting from empathy to quiet anger. "This isn't right," he said when she finished. "No one should be treated like this. Come, let's get you some food and we'll sort this out." Amaka's instinct was to refuse. Strangers in Lagos were rarely kind without motive, but hunger and desperation won. She followed Tunde to a nearby canteen, a small buka called Mama T's, where the air was thick with the aroma of jollof rice, pepper soup, and frying plantain. Mama T, a plump woman with a booming laugh, greeted Tunde like an old friend. "Oga Tunde, you are here again," she teased, setting down plates of steaming rice and spicy egusi stew. Over the meal, Tunde asked about Amaka's life, her dreams. "I wanted to be a nurse," she confessed, her voice shy. "I loved biology in school, but school fees, my mother's health. I had to stop." Tunde nodded, his eyes thoughtful. He didn't promise miracles, but his silence was purposeful, as if he was already planning. As they ate, Amaka felt a flicker of hope, like a candle in a storm. For the first time that day, she wasn't invisible. Tunde arranges for Amaka and Nneka to move into a modest flat in Yaba, funded by his personal charity, the Adebayo Hope Foundation. The move is emotional. Nneka weeps with gratitude, and Amaka feels both relief and fear at this sudden change. Tunde enrolls Amaka in a nursing program at the University of Lagos, covering her tuition and providing a stipend for Nneka's medicine. Amaka meets Chioma, a fellow nursing student from a similar background, who becomes her confidant. The chapter explores Amaka's awe at her new life, contrasted with her anxiety about fitting into the academic world and proving herself worthy of Tunde's trust. Amaka struggles in nursing school, facing prejudice from wealthier students who mock her village accent and secondhand textbooks. She grapples with self-doubt but is bolstered by Chioma's friendship and Tunde's encouragement. A subplot introduces Tunde's tension with his father, Chief Femi, who disapproves of his wasting money on nobodies like Amaka. Tunde's philanthropy is revealed to be a rebellion against his father's corrupt political world. Meanwhile, Amaka's story spreads through Lagos, trending on Twitter as #LegoCinderella. Madam Ngozi, humiliated, tries to save face with a public apology, which Amaka ignores, focusing on her studies. By 2023, Amaka graduates as a nurse, her mother healthier than ever. At her graduation, Tund and Chioma cheer her on. Amaka opens Neka's Hope, a free clinic in Makoko, funded by Tund's foundation and staffed by volunteers, including Chioma. The clinic becomes a beacon for the community, treating malaria, malnutrition, and more. Amaka faces challenges, local gang pressures, supply shortages, but her resilience shines. Tund's support continues, but their relationship remains platonic, rooted in mutual respect. In 2025, Amaka is Nurse Amaka, a symbol of hope in Makoko. Her clinic trains young women as healthcare assistants, breaking poverty's cycle. Tund, now openly defying his father, expands his foundation's work, inspired by Amaka's impact. Their friendship endures, a quiet bond of shared purpose. Amaka's story becomes a Lagos proverb. Even on the darkest Tuesday, one kind heart can rewrite your story. The story closes with Amaka walking through Makoko, her stethoscope around her neck, knowing her life is proof of that truth. What lesson did you learn from this? Kindly subscribe and like.